Hello, Pixel here. Rogue Legacy 2 is just days away, launching into early access with a preliminary version, and I have played it, gone through it, and seen what there is to see. There is definitely a lot of changes in this version over its predecessor, so what I am doing today is bringing you 5 tips for beginners for Rogue Legacy 2. Now, little disclaimer here, obviously things can change. This is an early access game. This is before this early access game even comes out. So some of this information may be dated as this game grows and gets added to, but I think this list is a pretty good starting point for new players. And with that said, let's jump into it. Starting out, the first tip is going to be to get familiar with the new Downstrike. In the first game, Downstrike was primarily just an offensive move, something that you brought out when you needed to hit the enemy from above. In this game, you still have that, but a lot of the teeth has been taken out of that attack as an offensive mechanism. Instead, Downstrike ends up being somewhat of a navigational mechanism where you can jump off of lamps and add extra little bits of height to your motion by downstriking things. I found a number of rooms that wouldn't be able to be navigated without using Downstrike, but also there was a number of situations that I was in where Downstrike was necessary to either dodge an attack or to avoid damage other ways. Tip number 2 is going to be to try the challenges. Now, in the beginning of this game, you're going to realize that the difficulty on the challenges and the special chests that you can get from them has been raised substantially. But once you've obtained 1 or 2 of these chests, you'll find that the rewards that you get for completing these challenges has also been increased. Greater challenge, greater risk, but also a greater reward. They are always worth trying. Even if you're in a situation where it may end your run, these challenges may be worth trying because the rewards are substantial. Tip number 3 is to beware of the teleport tubes. Now, the teleport tubes is something new that was added to Rogue Legacy 2. With these tubes, you're able to enter on one end, you quickly pass through the tube, and then you are spit out on the other side. Now, the majority of these tubes are fairly innocuous. You enter one side, the other side puts you out on a platform or somewhere safe. On occasion, you are dumped into a trap where there will be either enemies or fire or spikes, and you need to be prepared for that. So anytime that you are entering a tube, even if you think you see the exit on the other side, be very careful because you may be falling into a trap. Tip number 4 is to pay attention to your traits. Now, in Rogue Legacy 2, the first time you see a trait, it will have question marks on it and you won't know what it is. But also, another change for Rogue Legacy 2 is that you can earn gold, or an additional amount of gold, by taking the detrimental traits. In fact, a very quick way to see if a character has lots of detrimental traits on them is to just look at what the gold modifier is before you select the character. All this aside though, it's very important to see which traits your character has because some of them can be very, very detrimental. The stakes have once again in this facet of Rogue Legacy been raised. The 5th and final tip I have is to take your time when entering new rooms. There are 2 new trap types in this game that both aren't immediately apparent when you first walk into a new room. The first are some branch thorns that don't spawn up until 2 or 3 seconds after you've entered the room. Once they do, you can pretty easily cut them down, but if you're in a hurry, you may run to exactly where they are just as they're growing and they'll do a little damage to you. The second is a large ball and chain that's attached to a pivot point on a platform. These just spin around in circles and generally are pretty easy to dodge, but when they first spawn, the ball spawns right on top of the pivot point, and then it goes out to its full extension after that. If you just run through a room and start to run through, you may find that these balls all of a sudden come out of nowhere and do a little damage to you where they could have been avoidable if you just let the room settle for a second before you go dashing through it. For both of these traps, you start to get used to being able to identify them as you've been playing the game, so you may not need to slow down quite as much once you've become more experienced. That is going to be it for my 5 tips for Rogue Legacy 2 Early Access. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, head on over to my channel and check out some of my other videos. I've got a lot like this. Until next time, this has been Pixel.